From the studios of Books in Motion, this is Caryn Hoaglund, reading When You Have to Go There, Book 2 of the group series by Kevin R. Doyle. Now let's begin with When You Have to Go There. Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Robert Frost, The Death of the Hired Man. Chapter 1. Everyone who worked with him, or met him in some way during the course of his life, considered Roy Michaels a good cop. Not an outstanding or excellent cop, but a good one. On the force for 20 years next February, he'd served as a patrolman for 8 of those years, and a detective for the rest. Most people destined for plainclothes made it in 5 years or less, and most of his colleagues considered the fact that it took Michaels a few extra nothing more than an indication of his methodical, plodding approach to his work. Not a hot dog or superstar of any kind, Roy Michaels didn't go out of his way to horn in on the big callers, and had never been fortunate enough to be associated with a truly major case. But he went along, week after week and year after year, doing his job. A good cop, though not great. When he logged out at the end of shift at 4:30 in the afternoon that Wednesday, Roy Michaels would not be a good cop for much longer. He should have logged out at 3:45, the standard time, and for most of the day he'd hoped to be out and home on time. But a mundane morning spent re-interviewing people in a 3-month-old case had included one of those witnesses having moved on, causing Michaels to spend most of the afternoon tracing through various lease agreements, forwarding addresses, and employers before he managed to track down the 18-year-old in question. Upon finding his witness, zoned out after a night of bar hopping, it took every bit of effort and patience Michaels had to jolt the kid's memory and awareness long enough to fill in the blanks from the previous interview. All of which left Michaels clocking out at a good 3/4 of an hour later than his shift mandated. But anyone who'd worked on the force more than a couple of weeks understood that shift start times, and especially end times, were more a matter of wish fulfillment than cold, hard reality. At this point, Detective Roy Michaels had less than an hour to live. He stopped on his way out of headquarters to check in with Sergeant Mulrun in the patrol division, confirming their regular Saturday night poker game was a go. Mulrun had been going through some sort of problems at home lately, though of what sort no one quite knew. Usually among the most talkative of the patrol guys, Mulrun had kept fairly quiet lately. However, the sergeant perked up with the reminder of the poker game. Maybe, Michaels thought, things had turned around for the Sarge. If only he could say the same for his own domestic situation. Stepping through the revolving glass doors that fronted the Central Division building, doors which several members of the force felt a wee bit vulnerable in current times, Michaels took a deep breath. At the end of every shift, he never considered himself completely off duty until he could take a breath of clean, or as clean as possible in the middle of a major city, air. Breathing in, he could feel his muscles and tendons loosening, his nerves relaxing. Standing in front of headquarters, Roy Michaels now had less than 50 minutes of life left. Getting to the city parking garage and negotiating his Taurus out of the structure and onto the streets took another 5.5 minutes. Making his way out of the downtown area and onto one of the main arteries that laced through the suburbs consumed 18. 21 minutes and change in the life of Roy Michaels, but by this juncture, what's the point of counting? In a relatively short time, he made it all the way to his house in Herndon, one of the moderate-classed suburbs linking to the larger city. It was the kind of community where you could find a lot of middle managers, union card-carrying blue-collar types, and the occasional once-higher executive on their way down the ladder. Roy and Lori Michaels had moved into the...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?